Screw it up when I'm being filmed, so this may...
Pretend you're not.
Okay, guys, so we already had the...
This is okay.
Thank you. We already had the explanation of Robert's service, right? So we don't need that again. So we'll just do another one of his epic poems called The Cremation of Sam McGee.
Yay!
Well, there are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. And the Arctic trails have their secret tales that'd make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marsh of Lake LaBarge I cremated Sam McGee. Well, now Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows. Why he left his home in the south to roam round the pole, God only knows. He was always cold, but that land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell. And he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. Well, on a Christmas day, we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold through the parka's fold, it stabbed like a driven nail. For our eyes we'd closed and our lashes froze, till sometimes we couldn't see. Well, it wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel to toe, he turned to me and, "Camp," says he, "I'll cash in this trip, I guess. And if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request." Well, he seemed so low, I couldn't say no. Then he said with a sort of a moan, "It's the cursed cold, and it's got right hold till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. But 'tain't being dead, it's the awful dread of the icy grave that pains. So I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains." Well, a pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I would not fail. We started off at the crack of dawn, but God, he looked ghastly pale. And he crouched on the sleigh and he raved all day of his home back in Tennessee. And before nightfall, a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. Well, there wasn't a breath in that land of death as I hurried, horror-driven. With a corpse half hid, I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, but it seemed to say, "You may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate my last remains." The promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. And in the days to come, though my lips were dumb and my heart, how I cursed that load. And in the long, long night, by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in a ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows, God, how I loathed that thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow. But on I went, though the dogs were spent, and the grub was getting low, and the trail was bad, and I felt half mad, but I swore I'd not give in. And I'd often sing to that hateful thing, and it'd hearken with a grin. Till I came to the marge of Lake LaBarge, and a derelict there lay. And I saw on a trice it was jammed in the ice, and it was called the Alice May. I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum, and here, said I with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was laying around, and I heaped the fuel high. Well, the flames just soared and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see. And I burred a hole in the glowing coal and stuffed in Sam McGee. Well, then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so. And the heavens scowled and the huskies howled and the wind began to blow. And it was icy cold. But the hot sweat rolled down my cheek, and I don't know why. And the greasy smoke and an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. Well, I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear. The stars came out and danced about ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, "I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked and it's time I looked." and the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam looking cool and calm in the heart of the furnace room. And he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, "Please shut that door. It's warm in here, but I greatly fear you'll let in the cold and the storm. Since I left Plum Tree back in Tennessee, that's the first time I've been warm." There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales, make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marsh of Lake the Bars, I cremated Sam McGee.
Brilliant.
I'm in the theater.
Brilliant.
Why?
Huh?
Some of your act.